All right, as the video suggests, this is the pattern we are going to be making in this video. And we're going to stop at the pattern creation. We're not trying to make everything. This is just about creating patterns from scratch in Designer. So the first step you will want to do is to break it down into pieces. All right, I'm done. All right. But yeah, the first step is to break it out into pieces. And looking at it, if you've never analyzed a pattern before, then it could be very intimidating. But it's a pattern, which means things are being repeated. And honestly, it depends on how you want to make the pattern. I have a more systematic approach, which is probably more common. And that is to find the unique shapes. So if we look at this, there's one main shape we can see, and that is this right here. Let's fade that a little. The square, right? The tile, this is a tile I have in the house, right? So the square, we don't have a perfect square because it repeats and goes out of bounds. But you can fill in the rest. So this is the main largest pattern that is being repeated, but this in itself has a pattern as well. So we still don't have all of the unique shapes. So that's what I'm talking about, unique shapes. So if we go down another level, this is a pattern that is being repeated. Let me just right. So this pattern is being repeated like that into the other squares, right? It's being rotated 90 degrees around, and you can say, sweet, good, I found the pattern that is the unique pattern that's being repeated all along the tile. But you can actually go a step further, and I'm sure by staring at it by now you can see what I'm talking about, which is this is the unique pattern. The purple, this has no repeating elements in it, or no mirrored elements. This is the unique pattern that is creating this entire tile. So if I do that, all of this you see on screen has been created just from this area, just from this. And that is how you want to work, so that it's the most efficient way to create patterns, I find, right? I'm not some pattern genius or anything, but I think this will save us a lot of time. So this is what we're going to be focusing on and trying to replicate in Designer. Now, the next step, for me at least, is trying to figure out how I am going to do it before I even open Designer. Like, how am I actually going to make these shapes, right? And obviously, like most art or all art, there is more than one way to do it. And I have a recording that took me about 2 hours plus. And it wasn't the most efficient. I'll put it up on screen briefly so you can see, right? I didn't have as much control. And that is something you always want when creating geometric shapes, or when creating anything really. But in Designer is all about intentional control, right? So anyway, all that to say is these patterns here, the flowers, right? I'd like a way to accurately create these. So for that, I'll be using splines. And for these shapes, I'll probably use the full circle and see if I can cut it off, right? To be like a half circle in here, something like that. So, it doesn't have to be a perfect plan, but just have an idea of how you want to tackle it. And if you actually do not know how you want to tackle it, hopefully this video will give you an idea on how to start thinking like that. So don't worry, we will tackle it now. All right, so let's get started. I'm gonna bring this up. This is really about the pattern, so we really won't be using this screen in this video, to be honest. First note, shape node, and I'm going to set this to disk. This is going to be a circle, and what we're creating now is this part, right? We're creating this part of the pattern, or sorry, I should say this part. So the other thing I forgot to mention is reference. How will you magically create this pattern without looking at it or having it on your other screen? So there are two ways to, well, there are many ways to do this. I personally believe in eyeballing it and then trying to match it a bit later, because it's less things to worry about. But if you're the type who needs to have it in the program, then you can go here, background image. You can click this, and I've already imported my background image. All you have to do is, click load background image, and I already have a chopped version of mine. So yeah, and then you can change the opacity of it. So I'll be trying to go in and out of this so I can cater to both those people who like to just look at the reference and try to replicate it, and those who like trace. We'll try to do a bit of both. Actually, I'll change this to a paraboloid and then scan it. And what I'm doing here is trying to get the edge of this shape. You can also do a gradient radial if you want. As you can see, that this is actually more expensive. This is taking up 34 milliseconds, and we haven't even done anything yet. So you always want to be as lightweight as possible, and two of these together are already ultra fast. This is how long Substance is taking to execute this node. Very fast. 2 milliseconds is crazy. So what we're going to do is use a curve. Again, there are many ways to do this. I'll show you another way in a second. But yeah, so we send this into a curve, and this will allow us to remap this gradient, right? You see, different thing. So we'll move the end to the bottom so that the whitest part is black, right? The top is white and the bottom is black, and left to right is the gradation of those values. It'll make sense in a second. So you double click, and I'm gonna select two of these and make sure they're linear. Oops. So for example, I'll double click this, and I want this to be flat, and double click this and want this to be flat. Oops. So if we take this, it won't be able to go past. And for what our purposes, this is exactly what we want. So put those to the end and select these and drag them up. So, oops. So this gives us this ring, right? Again, there are many ways to create this. You could also run an edge detect on the sphere. As you can see, we have the ring and invert it. There are so many ways to make this. You see, I've made it already. Edge detect, ultra expensive. So it just depends on your needs. So for our purposes, this is perfect. And what I'll do is, so hard to select those, right? We'll carry them to the top when we're done. So I'll bring this across a bit because the reference has 2 rings, right? There are 2 rings in there. So let's do this again. Double click, double click, double click for the bottom, select all. Do that, we'll do this and bring these up, right? Now, for our purposes, we want it flat, but as you can see, we can make a gradient if we wanted to. So that's just something to keep in mind. Double click this, we'll flatten that out, and let's keep the reference on. Are they the same thickness? The outer one is slightly thicker, so let's just keep that in mind. I think we can get away with, oh yes, that's actually This is exactly what we want. So make sure they're to their limit, and then we'll drag them up. Could do it one by one as well. Good. Now we've created the rings, yeah? And if you wanted to adjust the distance between them, you could click the 2 points, hold Control, and you can adjust it like that. You can also go to the histogram scan, and adjust the position. And because the curve is taking the information from that, it will affect the ratio, right? The gradation, which is nice. Okay, so we've paid like 6 milliseconds for this. Perfect. Let's make some more room over here. Good. So we have the curve. What do we want? We want the curve in the corner, and we want it to go over to the other side, because we're still focusing on this triangle here, right? We don't want to do double work. We want our work to be doubled. All right, that was corny. So what you could do is go into a transform 2D. Hey, that's not what I want. This one. And we're gonna move this across a little. We don't want it to tile, so to the top right, we click in the tiling mode, we click this button and choose absolute, so that it doesn't follow the parent or the previous node. And we can click this and click no tiling. No sliding. I'll disable the image for now, and let us mirror this. Wow. And already you can see, yeah, I think you can see where we're going, right? And the cool part about this is you can change the offset if you wanted. So we can mirror in the Y, which means, you know, the up and down. And the default is the X, which is what we want. You can even offset the mirrored version. So anyway, this is great. With this on, we can now go back to the transform 2D and try to get the curve we want, the pinching down. So let's enable the reference. Yeah, so future keyframe here. I spent the last hour or so going through how I did it last time, and I came upon a faster way and more efficient way, actually. So what I did was I got my background image and I rotated it already. So I have 2 background images, this one, and if I load up this one. And the reason I did that, as you can imagine, is it will really help us eliminate a lot of guesswork when we're in ahead of time. Just trust me, ahead of time you have to go back and forth and back and forth. But if we have these 2 images, it just happens. But if we have these 2 images, it just so happens that our pattern has been rotated, right? It's at an angle. So for this particular pattern, I found that this was the most efficient way to handle it. So let me show you even more what I mean. If we drag this into the transform 2D, right? Let's line it up to the vertical one. Good. Is, you know, more or less lined up. So let's go to the transform 2D and load the 45 one. Sorry, the normal one. And rotate this, what, minus 45 degrees. Enter. Good. It's getting chopped off, obviously, because it's a square. So let's multiply that by 140. Yes, I have tested this already. Boom, boom. And now it is lined up. So whatever we do on the other reference image, it will line up to this one, which is the, you know, the final one that we want. So I just wanted to come back in here so that we can continue a lot more efficiently, and this video doesn't end up being 2 hours long or some unnecessary amount of time. So let's go. Also, we could add a shape to the bottom right here to cut off this excess. but it is also more efficient to just chop off the curve, the shape early before it gets added to anything else. So we'll add a shape node here. Let's turn that off for now. Use subtract, and we want the Y to be half, I guess. And then we'll move this down. We could increase that a bit. Let's make sure this doesn't tile. Absolute no tiling. So let's look here. It's being cut off, right? We could even go, whoops. We can even go down a little bit more. So when we get here, right? Let's plug that in. The bottom is cut, and then we can add whatever we want. Whoops. Then we can add whatever we want to the image. So let's focus on the vertical. Next step is splines. Let's create, I like to use the spline quadratic. Where's that? In this case, it will be the poly quadratic because we need quite a few points, right? And it looks like it's gonna cost a lot, but stay with me. So we will need about 5 points, I believe. And let's just start making this. So I'll speed through this to save you the pain. Make sure to close the spline. Okay, good. So now that we have this shape, what we want to do is fill it in, right? So let's press tab. Let's get a spline fill. And instead of plugging these in one by one, what we can do is press 2, and you'll see this thing up here change. Standard, material, compact. So we want material. Then we'll just drag it in here. Press 1 so that you go back to the singular. And good, this is done. So for this curve shape, we'll use a different spline, and that will just be the quadratic one. So spline, quadratic. Oops. It's it doesn't have to point the right direction, but I guess to be a good tutorial, I probably should. So nice. And this isn't a closed spline, so we can't fill it, right? It's not a shape to be filled, it's a line. So what we want is a spline render. So let's go to spline render, press 2. Maybe we should just leave 2 enabled for now, so we can just drag all the spline stuff. So click this, and as you can see, it has render. You'll notice I removed the preview part so that this doesn't show up. So let's go into this, and we want it a bit thicker. But as you can see, it's the same evenness. And to change that, if we go here, right? If we go here, you can see something called show thickness and envelope. And okay, that. So enable that and nothing changes, but that's because we don't have any thickness. In the thickness section, we can change, all right, very nice, the thickness of the start and the end. Of course, we want the end to be a point. Let's just change that. Go back to the render, delete that, sorry. And it hasn't updated because there's this thing called envelope spline amount. So if we increase this, what it will do is keep adding duplicates of the spline until it fills in the shape, right? That's it. So if we click this now, we have a filled, well, not filled, but a thick shape that we can use. And then the thickness will apply to each of those copies, right? Yeah, so that's pretty good. So what we want to do now is to duplicate this and create the bottom one, right? We could mirror, but it's actually a slightly different shape. So we'll just drag over the points. So let's speed through that. See, that wasn't so painful. So if y'all perfectionists are done, we can add these things together. So make a blend, add, literally, because they're all full white, so it's not a big deal. Duplicate that, plug that in there, and plug that in there. So these are now added to each other. So now they're added, we can see some changes we might want to make. Anyway, again, perfectionists, please stop working. Pencils down. Now we have that sorted out, we can add this curve here. And the cool thing is we can jump up here and just check, is it mirrored? Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't add it into the curve yet. So to do that, obviously we add a blend. Actually, we can just duplicate this because all this is it's changed to add. So let's go here and add that in. So these are added. And this is the wrong stage. It is this stage we wish to add it into. Yes, perfect. So let me drop that in here. Let me go here. Does it line up? Let's see. Look at that. Beautiful. Oh man, that's beautiful. So that means we can trust this view. Okay, so let's continue. So we'll use the spline quadratic again because I want more control over the tapering. You see it gets a little thick here, it's a little thin here, and it's a little thick again. So we'll use quadratic again, polyquadratic, sorry. And that's because it's, you know, poly, it has more than one point. You know what I mean? You can add more points to it. Okay, so let's line this up. And before we even add the spline render, we can actually just preview the thickness, remember? So scroll down and enable show thickness envelope. Why is this happening? Show thickness envelope. And start playing with the thickness here in the points properties. 6 there, 3. Good. Since we have some okay settings from this spline, let's just duplicate that spline render up there and drag this in. And let's see what that looks like. Wow, that's beautiful. Duplicate the blend and replace the outputs. Nice. Let's send that up there and see how that looks. Okay. So while this is in the view, we can still actually just edit this stuff, which is nice because it will mirror in real time. We can just push this across. So we have this. That's beautiful. Let's add the bottom part, and this part is actually incredibly easy. This it's technically the same shape pointing up and down, so I like these curves better. So we can use the spline quadratic for that. It's not poly. We only need two, a beginning and an end. So let's put this here. Put it where you want it to begin and where you want it to end, and then the middle part can just adjust the curve. That's a way you can simplify some of these things, right? Good. Envelope, and is it start thickness? Yeah, start thickness. You can make that, you can actually make that quite thick, because I think, don't forget, anything to the right is going to get chopped off and mirrored. So we're focusing on this curve here. Okay, that's close enough. Nice. So we have that. That's nice. We want this, I guess. This render wasn't too bad. See how that looks. That looks nice. Blend. Actually, we're gonna want our own little blend down here because we're gonna create this whole shape. We don't want to be, you know, cascading it constantly. We want to blend once at the end. So let's prepare that. Hold shift and put that there. Send that through. Send that through. So this is the blend that, not that. This is where we're gonna add in all the other little curves. So we can actually add this bulge here without a spline. Let's use the shape node and scale that down. I think we want a disc and we want it thin-ish. Yeah, that's pretty good. Blend that with that and add a transform, right? Whoops. Transform node, and we'll just bring it down. Wow, that was so easy. So I can actually adjust the size here. Let's just bring that down. And let's look at the mirrored version. Oops. Nice. Wait, sorry. Nice. So yeah, I would say that's pretty close. So this shape needs to go a bit further up. As you can see, it doesn't quite touch. So we can either make it long, but that'll make the tip more pointy. But there's this cool node that we can use instead. So I just realized I was not recording. So that's not great. But I'll show you what I did and the tool that I was talking about, the node that I was talking about. So let's go back to this shape, right? And let's reload the vertical image. So we wanted this shape to fit and be thin along that line, right? So what I did for that was I actually just added this shape to the design because I wanted more control over the thickness of that line. And because it appears at the top of that shape as well, I mirrored it, and this allowed me to adjust with this transformation 2D where I wanted the line, so it doesn't interact with anything else and just goes down, right? So if we add that up, that goes here to the end where the mirror is, and you can see we have a lot of control over that itself. So I didn't use the extend shape node for that, but I did use it for these little dashes. Now what the node does is if we have a shape, we can, let's just do that from scratch here. So I have a shape, let's turn that off. Let's use a disc. And I want to extrude it, basically stretch it out. I can create a extend shape grayscale node, and as you can see, it cuts it and just stretches it onward. In this case, horizontally, and it's set to bidirectional. So I'll set that to unidirectional if I want to send it in one direction, and there's an axis, right? An angle, sorry. So I can control what angle I want to stretch this out at. Very useful. I can also offset the position. I usually don't touch this. But anyway, so that's how I took the little shape. Let's re-enable the background image. I extended it a little and then I moved it down here, knowing it's going to be mirrored later. As you can see, mirrors over. And then I just duplicated the extend shape because I wanted it a little longer for the one in the corner. So that's how we use that node to get there. I hope that makes sense. Sorry, I wasn't recording. So where we are now is creating the rest of the shape, the rest of the pattern. And we've used all the tools we need to do that. So I'll just go ahead and create that, but I'll time lapse through it so you can see how I used it. So yeah, so let's create the rest of this pattern. So I'm just gonna stop here for a second. We notice that this pattern is vertical, right? And then it gets rotated 45 degrees. We could do it like we did everything else here, but because in my brain it feels easier to keep this vertical and then rotate it, we can just add it onto this pattern, if that makes sense, right? We'll basically just do what we did here again. So I'll create this vertically this time. So here you can see me using the spline quadratic and just duplicating it. Again, it's just a soft curve, so we don't need to use the poly quadratic for this. I started using that for the bulge, sorry, for the big curve, but I switched to the poly quadratic for more control, as you can see. Again, this is a personal preference. If you wanted to use the poly quadratic for the whole shape, you could, and then just outline the shape and then fill it in. So now I'm creating a disc and squashing it just for that part over there, making sure it doesn't tile. I'm duplicating that disc, blending it back in, and then just stretching it out for that like thin, nice line that you see there on the edge. And all that's left is the little diamond shape underneath. And I used a node that I haven't used before, which is the polygon. Well, I haven't used it in this video before, which is the polygon, just to stretch it a bit easier. And then we have the shape at the top here. Again, poly quadratic for more control over the thickness. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the end of it to bulge the way I wanted, so I just duplicated the disc and kind of lined it up there just to finish it off. All right, so yeah, that took a little bit, but the only new thing I used was this polygon tool because it was a bit easier to stretch the shape than the square was. So everything else is stuff that we would have used, right? All right, so we have the other part of the pattern. So all we have to do is combine. All right, so we have the other part of the pattern complete. So all that is left is to mirror this the same way that, well, not mirror, but actually yes, mirror. In this case, it will be a transform. So let's look at this. All right, so we'll do a manual kind of mirroring. So we'll take this. So we'll duplicate this blend node so that we can blend in a rotated version of the node onto itself. So let's click that transformation and we can horizontally mirror it here and then rotate it. Is it 90? Yeah, I should have just clicked 180. But now that has been mirrored manually. Oh, I forgot this shape. So let's just add that in super quick. Let's duplicate this. So the thing is, this doesn't actually need to be mirrored because this appears once. So we can keep what we have there and take this and blend it on after. So let's duplicate that blend and drop that on there. And then we can just bring this up. Let's just stretch it out. Nice, good. So as I was saying, this is complete. This shape is complete. And we just need to add it on to this. So obviously that's just the blends we have been using for the past 40 years. So send that into the mid and send that there, and it has been added. Did I duplicate the wrong blend? Yes, I did. So we'll shift. Good. So there you have it. We have created the pattern. We can now take off that background image and look at it in all of its beauty. This is great. So this is the core pattern that is being used for the ceramic tile. So now we have the core pattern we can just duplicate it into the full pattern, the square that we mentioned earlier. Let's go here, this square, right? The red. So let us do that, and that's gonna be that's gonna be so easy. So let's take this into a transformation node, and we want to make it half the size. So click this /2, half the size, and we'll offset it 0.5, well, negative 0.5, and 0.5 here, negative. What am I doing? Good. So it's perfectly in the corner. And the reason I did this is because we want to mirror it. Mirror grayscale. Let's go to mirror corner, this option. And we're gonna choose where the corner is, which is the bottom right. And it's a wrap. That's it. It mirrors it vertically and horizontally from that corner. And I don't know about you, but this looks pretty similar to this bad boy. Well, crap. Well, you know what I mean. It looks pretty similar to the reference. We have created the pattern. And the cool thing about it is this is really performant, right? This is really, really, really fast. So the last thing, if we wanted to add color to this, right? If we wanted to add some color, let's bring down these nodes appropriately here, right? There are many ways to add color, obviously. But let's look at the areas where there are unique colors here. So we have white, obviously, the dark blue, and the brighter blue, which is contained in half of the shape, and this is contained in the other half. So because we only actually have access to the white here, because that is what we have created, we can go back and look at where it has been separated and create the create the areas of color along the way. So if I go here, right, we know within the circles there is, right, within the circles, all within the circles is the other blue. So because this is all grayscale, we'll need to add in the color using values, right? Because we don't want to break all of the grayscale things that we've created so far. So what I'll do is I will copy this histogram scan and edit it so that it captures the inside of that, and I'll blend that in. So this will make sense. Let's blend that in here. I'll add it, and I will add a levels here. So I'm adding this levels in. I'm bringing in the out so that it's, you know, gray. So I did that so that we have another value here. So we're going to select these values later and color them. So if we continue down the chain, we now have we just need to change where we add in this circle. Clearly we have to add it in after the chop, not before. So let's put that back where it was, and let us add it in here instead. So now it will be here, and because it's a circle, it won't fill in the entire corner because it curves, right? Sorry, let's go here. So because it curves, so we can bring back in that extend shape again here. Extend shape grayscale and one direction. Whoops. Unidirectional, and we want that to point downwards 90. So we're stretching it down so that it fills in that corner fully, right? Beautiful. Okay, so we have that, we have the white, and now we just have to fill in this area behind here. with a different value. We're going to isolate these values later, and funny enough, we can actually just add a levels here and bring in the darkest color. So now we've introduced another value. Because the things we're adding on are full white, they're not going to affect the value we just created, because that is a darker value. So we have access to 3 different values here. Now, one way to do it would be to create a gradient map here and then assign colors to different areas of the shape, right? Let's change this to no interpolation, and then we'll do that and do this. So now we have 3 different colors, right? And we can actually just sample the tile. So I'll pick and say this color, this color, and then pick the black and say this color, right? So yay, we have it. But if we wanted to change the colors later, we have to go back to this gradient map and edit it each time, and that is incredibly annoying, right? So it would be pretty annoying to have to go in here and edit these colors all the time. So honestly, the best way to have done it with the colors already done would be to be blending in the colors as you go, so you can have control over each single area. Like if you wanted this flower to be a different color and all those specific things, you would have had to blend it in the color a bit earlier for that level of control. But for general control, what we can do is change the colors before we mirror it. So there's another way to have more control over the color other than just using the gradient map, which you have to edit all the time. As you can see, I have 3 separate colors here that I can change at any time. And I have more control. So it looks complicated, but what I did was I blended the first color onto the pattern. As you can see here, I blended that on using the histogram scan. So basically I sent out a scan and I found the part of the image I wanted, and I used it as the mask in the blend. So if I do it over, you can see scan, I find the point on the position I want. So in this case, it's the white. And then I use a gradient map to convert the pattern from grayscale to color. Boom. And I blend I blend this, right, with a color, let's say that, right? So if we double click this, all we get is the color, because it's set to copy and it is copying everything. But if we say only copy onto this, then we've told it to mask out only what is in here. And obviously white means all and black means none of the mask. So if we go here, we've masked that out. So I've done that 3 times. 1 for the brighter values, the pattern. 2, I inverted this. Actually, now that I think about it, I could just plug that in there. So I inverted this to get all of everything else, right? So in this case, I paint everything this blue, right? So if I change this, you'll see everything is that same color. I'm layering on the colors. So I blend that in. And then for the last color, I isolate this area with the histogram mask, right? So we isolate that. And then it just inverted it so that it's white. So it's being selected. So if I click this now I have this color on top. I'm layering the color changes on. And that's one other way that you can have more control over the colors after you've created the pattern in grayscale in this case. So after we've done that, what we can do, delete that. Transformation 2D takes color as well as grayscale. So if we plug that in here, that goes in the corner, and then we use a mirror color. Mirror color, same settings, mirror corner, and choose bottom right. And now we have a colored pattern, and we have direct control, easy control over those colors, right? Very nice. Oops. And if you plug that in, we have our pattern. So that wraps up the video. Of course, you can take this into a tile generator and you can take this into a tile generator and start tiling it, right? Change that to image input, and here you go. You have a bunch of tiles already set up and done. You can even scale them, you know, to get your spacing in between the tiles. So like there's a lot you can do here, but this is for the pattern. And that wraps up the video on how to create a simple ornate pattern. And I hope the video wasn't too long. I wanted to make sure it was easy to understand, easy to step through. There's no fast movement, no time lapse. It's just how to do this from beginning to end fully, and also how to do it while having complete control. So I hope that this was helpful, this was useful. I know it's a crazy long one, but with all of these techniques, I believe you will be able to make very efficient patterns in Designer and have complete control over them. And all of these nodes are taking up very, very little time, which means they're very fast. So if you were to create a material with these to go into Substance Painter, you would be able to, it will be able to perform very, very quickly. So for example, this one node takes up so much computational time. So anyway, I'll stop blabbering. So that's how to create this pattern. Let me know if this is something you would like to know, like some other patterns, maybe filigree or some other cool, intricate designs. This was a bit more simplistic. Let me know if this is something you would want to see more of. But other than that, I will see you in the next one. Respect. Protect.